So over the years, there's been a lot of talk around the issue of the returning of artifacts and other valuable treasures that were stolen from Africa during slave trade. We noticed that a lot of those artifacts have been returned to their rightful countries, and this has been a positive move when it comes to the restoration of the African identity and the restoration of African heritage and the restoration of African history. Because when these artifacts were stolen or taken from their rightful places here in Africa, they were taken together with the information that they carried. They were taken together with the history that they carried. They were taken together with the identity that they carried. And what remained was a distorted history of a people that could not connect their past to their present. When these artifacts were taken, there was no more point of reference for Africans to remember where they came from, to remember who they were. And the only history that we had access to was the history that was written by the same colonial masters that had stolen our original or our true history. So one tends to wonder if the history that we remained with, the history that we learned about Africa, is the true history of Africa. With the returning of these artifacts, perhaps it will be possible for us to connect the dots. It will be possible for us to put the pieces together and piece up a history or a fragmented identity that we once lost. We are trying to put the pieces together, and possibly as more artifacts are returned, we'll be able to do so. Everything was strategically done in order to divide us, in order to remove the unity that existed in Africa prior to colonialism. It was done in order to remove the resilience that was there in Africa before colonialism. It was done to remove the religious strength that we had in our own roots. And what replaced our history was a fabricated history which has not been able to serve us very well, because even years after gaining our independence as different African countries, we continue to diverge from our own identity, and we keep on borrowing from the references that were strategically left in our lives by colonialists. And when the colonialists came and took whatever point of references we had which connected us to our ancestors, they also took with them that particular connection, such that to remember who we are as a people, to remember where we come from, to remember what we stand for, to remember what we are as Africans, it has become a very, very, very challenging mountain to climb. Yes, we thank those that keep returning these artifacts. We thank those that are participating and contributing to the correction of history. With the returning of these artifacts, it's also an acknowledgement that some wrongs were done by those that did the wrongs, right? They are acknowledging what they did. They are acknowledging that they stole from us. They are acknowledging that they took what was not theirs. Hence, they are returning the artifacts. But in that acknowledgement, it is also essential for some wrongs to be corrected as well. For instance, the issue of the resources that were taken from Africa throughout the colonial era, because Africa was stripped of its valuable resources. Some approximate these lootings to trillions and trillions of dollars, 799 plus trillion dollars stolen from Africa during the colonial era. And in addition to this, colonialism also contributed to the destruction of African families. Every time those colonial masters came to take our brothers and sisters to their home countries through slave trade, our families were ripped into pieces. Our families were torn apart because they would take fathers, they would take mothers, they would take uncles, they would take daughters, they would take whoever they could take who represented a healthy African. They chose the fittest Africans They chose the healthiest Africans. They chose those Africans that had good genes, and they took them to their countries. And in so doing, we were left with a traumatized continent, because that was a very atrocious experience. It was a very atrocious time to live in. And the torment that these families would endure when they would have lost their brothers and sisters was hard to bear. And in addition, to add salt to the wound, a lot of personal belongings were also taken. Cows were taken, land was taken, wives were taken, husbands were taken. It was just a terrible time. And there was nothing that an African could do to protect his or her identity or her belongings. In addition to the restoration and the repatriation of our ancestral remains that were taken to Europe and other continents, in addition to the restoration of our artifacts that were taken, it's also important for us to have that conversation around the compensation that Africa should get. It's important for there to be a conversation around the compensation that Africa should get from their losses during slave trade. We need a collective voice. Africans speaking as one, speaking as one, coming together to say, we are now going to confront these colonial masters so that they pay back for what they did. Africa is still suffering from the effects of colonialism. Yes, people deny it, but the economic disparities that exist between first world countries and most African countries are unbelievable. It's hectic. So those are some of the issues that need to be addressed. I believe if Africans can speak with one voice, this will be possible. But the problem is when such issues are confronted, Africans tend to do it in their different respective countries. Ghana does it on its own. South Africa does it on its own. Uganda does it on its own. Zambia does it on its own. However, in so doing, we are dividing our power. But if we were to speak with one voice, have one particular organization, for instance, if the African Union would actually be effective in this conversation of claiming compensation on behalf of the entire continent, that would be a plus. If the African Union would have such a conversation on a large scale, on an international scale, representing the entire African continent, to say, we want compensation for slave trade, we want compensation for land that was taken, we want compensation for the human rights abuses that our forefathers endured, because there is need for that restitution to occur before we can move forward. Because as long as we don't address the past, we will never be at par. We will never be on a level playing field. It would be actually very ideal if those calculations are done to accuracy, to say this is the money that Africa must be paid as a continent, and that money is channeled towards development, and also perhaps the writing off of debt that already exists with those first world countries, as acknowledgement of everything that Africa has had to endure for generations and generations.